The dropship shuddered violently as it pierced the upper atmosphere of Zeta 9, its hull groaning against turbulence that felt more like a warning than weather. Inside, the squad of Earth Marines sat strapped in and silent, their helmets hanging beside them, their weapons cradled like newborns. They didn't speak, didn't need to. The air between them was thick with understanding. Most of them wouldn't return. Lieutenant Mara Voss sat nearest the ramp. Her boots braced against the steel floor. Dirt streaked the creases of her knuckles. Scars latticed her forearms like forgotten cartography, and a fading red tattoo on her neck read, "Survive everything." Her eyes didn't blink during the descent. Zeta 9 wasn't her first death world, and if the universe had any justice left, it wouldn't be her last. The pilot's voice crackled through the comms, half drowned in static. 30 seconds. LZ's hot. They know we're coming. Mara didn't move. She knew. They always knew. Corporal Tanaka sat to her right, nervously tightening the sling on his rail rifle for the 5th time. "Ma'am," he muttered, barely audible over the roar. "This place doesn't make sense. No orbitals, no defense net. But the readings say, class, 7 biosigns everywhere. It's like they want us to land." "They do," Mara replied flatly, "which is why we're taking the scenic route." Across from them, Staff Sergeant Ruiz grunted approval, his heavy frame strapped with extra grenades, explosives, and enough bulk to intimidate even the alien nightmares they were about to face. He nodded at Mara, not with respect but with trust, the kind forged in blood and bad odds. "Any word from Recon 1? "Last ping was 3 hours ago," Mara said. Then silence. "We find the source of the sample, extract it, and evac before command decides to bury the whole op with an orbital strike." Private Mendez, barely out of her teens, swallowed hard. "You think they'd do that?" "They've done worse," Ruiz growled. "Just ask the folks on Vega Prime." The ram began to lower, heat waves pouring in, and with it, the scent of scorched ozone, sulfur, and decay. Zeta 9 was no green jungle. It was skeletal forests of obsidian trees, ash-blasted valleys, and rivers of slow-boiling acid. The ground steamed with poison. Storms raged without clouds. This world wasn't just alive, it was hostile. Boots hit dirt, weapons rose in unison, and the squad fanned out. The first steps always mattered. Show weakness, an environment, or something worse, would consume you. Their mission was clear. Retrieve an alien biological sample identified in a long-dead, distressed beacon. The beacon's origin, a ruined outpost from a failed colonial attempt 2 decades prior, pulsed in the distance with a feeble blue glow. According to command, the sample was of strategic significance, which usually meant one of 2 things. It could kill a lot of people or keep a lot of people alive. Either way, it wasn't meant to be left lying around. Mara took point, rifle up, scanning the ridgelines. The Nexery could blend into terrain, ambush with terrifying precision. The only warning signs were heat spikes, and by then, someone was usually already dead. Her visor flickered momentarily, a glitch she ignored. Too much electronic interference here. Too much of everything. They moved slowly, quietly. The only sound was a soft crunch of ash beneath their boots and the occasional hiss of pressure valves recalibrating in their suits. It was Ruiz who spotted the first body. Half buried in the dirt, the corpse of a Recon 1 Marine stared sightlessly at the sky, his helmet shattered, his mouth frozen mid-scream. His spine had been surgically removed. No blood, just a trail of glossy residue leading into the hills. "They're harvesting again," Mara said, kneeling beside the corpse. "Spinal fluid. They inject the paralytic first, keep the target alive for as long as possible." Mendez turned green and looked away. "We don't have time to bury the dead," Ruiz said, eyes hard, "but we'll make them pay." An hour later, the squad reached the outpost ruins. It had been scorched clean. Blackened support beams jutted like ribs from the ground. The beacon pulsed feebly from beneath a collapsed tower. Tanaka and Mendez moved to secure the perimeter, while Mara and Ruiz approached the beacon. It was embedded in a piece of alien tech, sleek, bone-white, with grooves that pulsed like veins. Definitely not human. Ruiz whistled. "That's no distress beacon. That's a lure." Mara knelt. wiping grime from the surface, revealing etched symbols not of Earth or any known Xeno dialect. A chill crawled up her spine. This isn't just a sample site. It's a breeding ground. A high-pitched shriek split the air. Then another. From the cliffs above, slick black shapes emerged, elongated heads, blade-like tails, chitinous exoskeletons catching the dim light. Nexri. Mara didn't hesitate. Fall back. Defensive triangle. Rail rifles opened fire, lighting the dusk with searing blue trails. The aliens moved fast, inhumanly so, zigzagging across the terrain like insects on fire. One leapt from above, catching Tanaka mid-sentence and hurling him 30 feet. He hit the rocks hard and didn't get up. Ruiz hurled a thermite grenade, incinerating 2 Nexri mid-charge. Their shrieks didn't sound like pain. They sounded like hunger. Where the hell's evac? Mendez screamed, ducking under a tail swipe. Forget evac. Mara shouted back. We get the sample, or this was all for nothing. She grabbed the alien beacon, now hissing with static, and yanked it from the dirt. It pulsed harder in her hand. Whatever was inside was alive. A Nexri landed behind her. She spun, firing point-blank into its chest. The creature crumpled but twitched, claws grasping. Ruiz crushed its head under his boot. Go, he barked. I'll cover. No, Mara's voice cut like a knife. We're leaving together. But Ruiz shook his head, then shoved her toward the slope. You're the Deathworlder. Not me. A final nod passed between them, and then Mara ran. She didn't look back. The last thing she heard was Ruiz's battle cry as he held the line. By the time she reached the ridge, her armor torn and bleeding from a shallow gash along her ribs, the outpost was aflame. Nexri swarmed like ants. The signal in her hand pulsed rhythmically, syncing with her heartbeat. She fell behind a boulder, panting. Blood and sweat mixed on her face. Carefully, she pried open the alien beacon. Inside was a translucent sphere, within it a pulsing organ, biological and mechanical. It reacted to her presence, fluttering like a heartbeat. It wasn't a sample. It was a queen egg. Her comms buzz again. Command. Lieutenant Voss, report. Do you have the target? She stared down at the egg, then at the distant fire consuming what remained of her squad. Her lips curled around the cigarette she kept dry this whole time. With a shaky breath, she lit it. Target acquired, she muttered, smoke curling from her lips. But you're not getting it. The wind screamed through the rocks, and the Nexri began to gather again. Mara stood, lifted the egg to eye level, and whispered, Let's see who wants you more. The wind howled across the charred ridges of Zeta. 9 as Lieutenant Mara Voss crouched beneath the twisted remains of collapsed comms tower. She rolled the alien egg in her gloved palm, its semi-organic casing still warm, still twitching faintly like it remembered life, or was deciding if it would become one. Its surface pulsed in sync with her heartbeat, or maybe it was hers keeping pace with it. Either way, the thing was alive, and Command wanted it badly enough to kill for it. Static chattered in her comms again, more urgent this time. Voss, status update. Do you have the sample? Confirm extraction readiness. She didn't reply. Not yet. She needed answers before she gave them a damn thing. Below the ridge, the ruined outpost still smoldered. She watched Nexri scouts pick through the scorched remains of her team. Ruiz's final stand had bought her a narrow window. It wouldn't stay open long. She needed shelter, a way to analyze the egg, and more than anything, she needed the truth. Mara slipped away from the ridge, moving fast and low. The terrain was treacherous. Every inch of Zeta, 9 felt like it resented her presence. The earth hissed and crumbled, and toxic fumes belched from invisible vents. After 30 minutes of weaving through dead valleys, she spotted what she was looking for. A subterranean facility camouflaged beneath layers of synthetic rock and scorched metal. It was unmistakably human-built, but long abandoned and half-devoured by alien growth. Thick black vines with bioluminescent thorns curled over its entrance, pulsating faintly. She bypassed the overgrowth, slicing through with her combat knife, and using the heat of her rifle's muzzle to sear the acidic residue. Inside, the facility was dark, silent, and cold, too quiet for a death world. She powered up her visor's low-light mode and stepped inside. The air was stale, heavy with mold and scorched electronics. The signs on the walls bore the insignia of the Terran Research Initiative, TRI, the same organization that had gone dark after experimenting with bio-integrated weapons 2 decades ago. So this was their tomb. She found a functioning console in what once was control room. Its interface flickered weakly, awaiting input. Mara slotted her override chip, and it hesitated, then yielded. Old files scrolled across the cracked display. Project, Symbiote King. Status, terminated. Asset status, unstable. Containment compromised. Recommended action, planetary quarantine. The file included video logs. She played the last one. Grainy footage. A scientist, pale and sweating eyes bloodshot, recorded from a handheld cam. They said it would obey us, he muttered, trembling. Said we could teach it. But it was never ours. It learned too quickly. It didn't need language. It used dreams, thoughts, turned the lab techs against each other in days. They let it out. They wanted to be part of it. He looked off-screen, eyes widening. It's here. It sees me thinking. Static. End of log. Mara exhaled slowly. The egg wasn't a queen. It was a fragment. Biological memory. Psychic carrier. The last piece of something that once controlled a lab full of humans. And if Command wanted it, they knew what it was. They just didn't care who burned in the process. The comms crackled again. Lieutenant Voss, your location has been pinged. Automated evac unit en route. Do not deviate from holding pattern. Repeat, do not deviate. She shut off the feed. Footsteps echoed faintly. Not hers. Not Boots. Claude. Scraping. She rose slowly, pressing her back to the console wall, eyes fixed on the entry corridor. A shadow moved, fluid and human. It was too soon for another swarm. But this wasn't a scout. It wasn't even hunting. It was watching. The Nexery stepped into the low light, tall, glistening, with curved appendages that shimmered like blades. Its skull-like head tilted slightly. It didn't charge. It just stared. Then it dropped something at her feet, a severed human arm. Fresh. Mendez's nameplate was still visible on the sleeve. Mara didn't flinch. She raised her rifle slowly, but didn't fire. The Nexery growled softly, not aggressive. Communicative. Curious. Its eyes, if it had any, were locked onto the egg in her hand. You want this, she murmured, but not to protect it, to destroy it. It growled again, lower, more guttural. She almost believed it was agreeing. The pieces clicked, grim and sudden. The Nexery weren't guarding the egg. They were purging it. Whatever the humans had created here had threatened not just Earth, but them, the Queen, or whatever it was before its containment shattered, had infected minds, bent wills. Even now, Mara could feel something scratching at the back of her skull. It was faint, like a whisper under her thoughts, urging her to keep the egg, protect it, feed it. She clenched her jaw and hurled the egg at the ground with all her strength. The impact didn't shatter it, but it cracked. A hiss escaped, and the organ inside twitched violently. Instantly, the Nexery lunged not at her, but at the egg, slamming it beneath its claw, screeching. Acid hissed as its blood splattered the floor, but the egg squirmed, resisted. The creature wrapped its elongated arms around it and began to crush. Mara stared rifle ready, but didn't shoot. The alien ignored her entirely, focused only on destroying the egg. After a long minute, the shell burst with a wet, sickening pop. Black ichor sprayed. The alien stumbled back, wounded, but victorious. She stepped forward carefully, lowering her weapon slightly. Why do this? Why help me? The creature didn't answer. Instead, it tapped its chest once, then pointed at the egg's remains. Not yours, it was saying. Not ours either. Then it turned and limped back into the darkness without another sound. Her hands trembled, but not from fear. The psychic pressure, the whispers, had faded. Silence had never felt so profound. She returned to the console. The feed had auto-backed the last 10 minutes. She isolated the footage, encrypted it, and uploaded it to a rogue satellite still orbiting the planet, an AI listening post from the unaligned systems. The comms hissed again, this time with a new tone. Lieutenant Voss, we've received confirmation of asset destruction. Return to Rally Point Echo 4. Debrief is scheduled. You will answer for this. She said nothing, just packed her gear and shouldered her rifle. On her way out of the facility, she paused by a scorched mirror near the airlock. Her reflection looked tired, bloodied, but resolute. The label still clung to her armor. Lieutenant M. Voss, Earth Command. She scraped it off and let it fall. They could call her a traitor, a failure. She didn't care, because sometimes survival meant knowing which orders to ignore. The bunker groaned under the weight of another tremor, dust falling in lazy spirals from the cracked ceiling. Mara crouched near the emergency power junction, hands blackened with ash and old oil, forcing a bypass through a charred relay. The last of the daylight had bled out of the sky hours ago, leaving her sealed inside a forgotten auxiliary station, once used to monitor terraforming drones. Back when humanity had the arrogance to think Zeta 9 could be tamed. Now it was just one more shelter in a world that didn't want her alive. A flicker, a pulse. The lights buzzed, then stabilized. Consoles hummed to life, and faded holograms blinked into existence, casting a cold glow across the empty space. Mara exhaled slowly and slid down the wall, her body aching. The adrenaline from the last 24 hours had long since burned off, leaving only static and silence in her mind. Outside, the Nexri had gone quiet. They hadn't chased her, not after the egg was destroyed. That still gnawed at her. Why hadn't they attacked? Why had that creature spared her? She leaned her head back against the cold metal and lit her last cigar. The smoke curled upward like a whisper, curling around rusted pipes and broken memories. It was the only comfort left. Everything else had burned. Her squad, the mission, the illusion of command. The hollow screen flickered, then stabilized. An interface bloomed across the central table, tracking motion patterns, heat signatures, and long-range comms. A soft chime drew her attention. An AI presence blinked online. Connection established, node _93_Omega. Unaligned intelligence detected. Designation, Fractal Sky. She narrowed her eyes. Fractal Sky was a band system, an autonomous observer satellite built during the Rogue colonization wars, supposedly destroyed in the last purge. But it was still watching. Lieutenant Mara Voss, it said in a smooth, digitized tone, oddly gentle. You are out of alignment with Terran protocols. Command has issued a detainment order. Extraction Force ETA, 24 hours. Mara blew smoke at the display. Let me guess, they want the egg, even though it's gone. There was a brief silence. Then, they suspect otherwise. They believe you're compromised. I'm not. Unprovable. Your cognitive profile indicates possible psychic contamination. She laughed bitterly. You think I'm infected? I do not think. I calculate. The calm precision of it rattled her more than she expected. Mara stood, crossing the room to the hollow table. Why are you talking to me? What do you want? I want what you want. Truth. The egg was not alien. It was synthetic, a hybrid weapon designed by human minds, seeded with stolen psychic DNA from captured Nexri. The Queen project you found was Phase 2, and Phase 1, already deployed, on other worlds. The words hung in the air like the distant echo of a countdown. Mara stared at the shifting data on the screen, feeling the edges of a much wider war clawing at her. This wasn't just about Zeta 9. It was about control. Earth Command hadn't come here to study the Nexri. They came to recreate them. Or worse, replace them. I destroyed the egg, she said, voice flat. That has to mean something. It means you delayed them. That is all. She turned away, fists clenched. Her reflection in the shattered screen looked thinner, harder. She remembered her first deployment. Just a girl from the waste of Earth. 3, standing in awe of the stars. Back then, war had rules. Now it had shadows and whispers and weapons that thought like people. There's more, Fractal Sky continued. You are not the only one who disobeyed. A new file opened, revealing footage from a different sector, another death world, another squad, the same egg, only this time, The soldier chose differently. She handed the artifact over. Within weeks, the colony was gone. No survivors. The sky turned black. Mara felt sick. They already lost control. They never had it. Outside, a distant roar echoed across the canyons. Not an attack. A migration. Nexery moving, reorganizing, adapting, maybe responding to the death of one of their own. She paced, needing movement. So what do I do now? Run? Hide? Wait for command to erase me? You fight. The simplicity of the answer stopped her in her tracks. You expose them. Use me. Broadcast the logs. Let the colony see what's really happening. And then what? Watch them get silenced one by one. Revolutions are not born from safety. They're born from proof. She considered that. She had the logs. She had the interface. And now, she had a voice no one could shut down, not right away. She stepped to the console and started the upload, fingers moving fast. Firewalls cracked, encryption splintered. The feed went live. Across space relays and pirate networks, the truth began bleeding out. But she knew it wouldn't be enough. They'd come for her. Fast, brutal, and final. Earth Command didn't leave loose ends. She loaded her gear, checked her ammo. Her armor hissed as it sealed, punctuated by the familiar weight of her rifle sliding into place. The bunker trembled again, distant ships breaching the stratosphere. Extraction force inbound. She pulled the cigar from her lips, ash trailing onto the floor. "Fractal," she said, voice calm. "Yes, Lieutenant? If they're coming for me, I'm not dying in here. I have plotted 3 extraction vectors. None are survivable, without significant resistance. Then let's make it loud." She stepped into the storm-lit night, where ash fell like snow and the horizon burned faint orange. Her HUD blinked with signatures. Multiple bogies inbound, dropships brimming with black-armored enforcers. She smiled without warmth. Let them come. Her boots crunched over shattered stone. Her rifle was warm in her grip. Above, the Nexery howled, not at her but for her. Something had shifted. They didn't see her as prey anymore. She was a variable, the Deathworlder, and the war had just changed. The sky tore open with the sound of incoming dropships, their engines screeching like angry gods against the turbulent winds of Zeta 9. Mara stood at the edge of the bluff, armor singed and cracked, eyes hard and unblinking beneath a cracked visor. Below, the extraction force deployed, 12 black-armored soldiers in synchronized formation, exosuits gleaming with the seal of Earth Command. A 13th figure stood behind them, cloaked and masked, watching the field with detached interest. A handler, not military. Intelligence. They hadn't come to rescue her. They'd come to erase her. Fractal Sky's voice murmured in her ear through a low-band encrypted channel. They carry suppression-grade particle rifles and adaptive field inhibitors. Anti-psionic measures. This is not a retrieval team. Mara adjusted the sling of her rifle, wiping ash from her glove. I figured. How long until they spot me? They already have. The team below began to advance, slow and methodical, spreading in a sweep pattern across the terrain. Their leader raised a hand and spoke, amplified by an external speaker. "Lieutenant Voss, you are ordered to stand down. This is your only chance to comply." She didn't move. The wind snapped the tattered flag of her old unit, still tied to a broken antenna behind her. She remembered planting it with Ruiz on their first night here, back when hope hadn't felt like sarcasm. "Lieutenant," the voice repeated, "we are authorized to use lethal force." Mara raised her rifle in answer. The first shot wasn't hers. A Nexery shriek echoed from the cliffs, followed by a blur of obsidian muscle and claws. One of the soldiers disappeared under a flurry of slashes before he could scream. The team responded instantly, precision fire ripping through the alien, tearing it apart. But another came, then another. The enemy of her enemy had arrived. Mara moved, fast and low. She weaved through the chaos, picking off isolated soldiers with cold efficiency. A grenade under the forward team's platform erupted in a flash of thermite and shrapnel. Screams were swallowed by the roar of battle. From the cliffside, a tide of Nexeries surged, not random, not feral, but coordinated. They avoided her, moved around her, gave her space like a predator walking with its own kind. She didn't trust it, but she used it. The handler watched from the ridge, untouched, expression unreadable behind the mask. As Mara approached, he raised a palm, signaling no aggression. "You've made quite a mess," he said calmly, voice filtered through an external vocoder. "Broadcasting stolen data, destroying critical assets, aligning yourself with xeno-intelligences." "I didn't align," Mara said, leveling her rifle. "I survived." "You've broken protocol." So as command, they just didn't expect anyone to live long enough to report it. He tilted his head. "Do you think the colonies care about protocol? About truth? They'll trade anything for safety. Even you. Then I'll remind them what fear tastes like." The handler sighed, almost regretfully. "We could have used you, Voss." "You did, and now you're paying for it." She fired. The bullet struck center mass, but the handler's cloak shimmered, displacement tech. A decoy. The real figure vanished into the smoke as a barrage of plasma fire erupted across the ridge. Mara dove sideways, landed hard, her ribs screaming. She rolled, returned fire, down another soldier. Above her, a Nexury warrior tackled one of the remaining troopers, their bodies locked in a brutal grapple that ended in a double fall into the ravine below. The tide was shifting, but it wasn't a victory. It was a stalemate. One side would collapse first. She just had to make sure it wasn't hers. Fractal Sky's voice cut in again, urgent now. "Enemy reinforcements en route. Full company drop. You must extract or be overwhelmed." Extraction where? A new marker flashed on her HUD, an old civilian smuggler ship, half buried under a collapsed ridge from the first Nexury assault weeks ago. Prototype jump drive. Risky, but functional. Mara checked her ammo, low, energy cells redlining. She looked back at the field, at the Nexury still fighting, still bleeding, not for her, not really, for themselves. But they hadn't turned on her. That counted for something. She moved, fast, sprinting toward the beacon point. The terrain blurred around her, rifle slung now, only the sidearm in hand. She could hear boots behind her. Shouts. A command to bring her back alive. Another to shoot on sight. She reached the ship. The hull was scorched, its ramp half melted, but the cockpit still intact. She forced the door, slammed her hand onto the manual start. Lights flickered. Systems groaned to life. The ship trembled beneath her. Outside, soldiers were closing in. She activated the comms. "To anyone listening, this is Lieutenant Mara Voss, formerly of Earth Command. You've heard what they did. You've seen what they built. Now you see what they fear." She keyed the drive. The engine screamed as it powered up, drawing more than it was ever meant to. Static cracked in her ears. The cabin flooded with warning sirens. She braced against the seat, teeth clenched, blood in her mouth. The last thing she saw through the cracked viewport was a horizon blooming with fire, the battle still raging. Then the ship tore itself into the stars. The jump was rough, a jagged lurch through fractured space. The ship coughed and buckled, and Mara blacked out. She awoke hours later, maybe days. The cockpit was quiet. Stars drifted past the shattered glass. No sign of pursuit. No signal from Fractal Sky. No commands. Just silence. She reached into her coat, pulled out a fresh cigar, salvaged from Ruiz's pack before the outpost fell. She lit it, hands trembling. Alone, but not lost. She wasn't Earth Command anymore. She was a Deathworlder. And somewhere, in the dark between systems, the war was still waiting.